Have you ever stood in a room where death just happened and felt like the silence itself was screaming at you? That's where my story begins. He died, and not just in some distant way, not in some headline or statistic. He died right in front of me, and I was powerless to stop it. People think death is a clean cut, like a candle flame snuffed out, but it's not. It leaves an echo, a weight, a question mark that hangs in the air long after the body goes still. And in that echo, something happened that I never could have imagined. Jesus came. His presence filled the room so completely that I thought my heart would explode. He didn't come to soothe me with gentle words, not at first. He came to show me something, and what he revealed has burned into my mind every day since. He showed me violent ideology for what it really is, how it grows, how it kills, how it seeps into America's veins like poison. And he tied it all to what would follow after Charlie Kirk's death. I'll be honest with you, I didn't want this. I didn't want visions, revelations. I wanted my friend alive, breathing, laughing like he always did. But instead, I found myself sitting on the cold floor, holding his lifeless hand, while Jesus pulled back the curtain on a reality I didn't want to see. It started with a vision. The walls around me seemed to fade, and suddenly I was in a crowded hall. Students filled the seats, their faces lit by the glow of phones, half listening, half distracted. At the front, a man spoke. Charlie Kirk. His voice was firm, his words sharp, his presence commanding. Some leaned in, nodding in agreement. Others scowled, whispering to each other, shaking their heads. And then, in the back of the room, a figure stood. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel the rage rolling off him like heat. He reached into his jacket. The room seemed to slow. The sound of the gunshot split the air. The microphone clattered to the floor. Chaos erupted. Screams, panic, blood. And then I heard Jesus' voice, deeper than sound, sharper than thought. Do you see? Violent ideology does not start with a bullet. It starts with a seed. That sentence hit me like a punch. And then he showed me more. I saw the man who pulled the trigger. Not just that moment, but his whole path. Years of isolation, nights spent scrolling through feeds, filled with anger and half-truth. Rooms where voices preached fear, stoked hatred, twisted facts into fuel. Friends who tried to reach him, but gave up when he pushed them away. Family who didn't understand the storm brewing inside him. And through it all, the same whispers pouring into his mind. They are your enemy. They are silencing you. Violence is the only answer. And Jesus said, violent ideology is murder in slow motion. I wanted to look away. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that I couldn't handle this. But he didn't let me. He showed me the bigger picture. I saw maps of America, veins of red and blue splitting neighborhoods, cities, even families. I saw living rooms where people no longer spoke to one another. Dinners eaten in silence because politics had poisoned the table. I saw campuses where debates, once sparked thought, now collapsing into shouts, threats, fists. And I saw the way ideology hardened into hatred, how disagreement morphed into dehumanization. Then he spoke again. America is bleeding, not from bullets alone, but from words sharpened into weapons. When love is traded for ideology, blood is inevitable. I fell to the floor in that vision, sobbing, because I saw it, not just Kirk's death, but a pattern, a contagion. His murder wasn't an isolated act. It was the fruit of a tree that had been watered for years. And the roots of that tree were spreading, unseen, into millions of hearts. When I came back to myself in that hospital room, clutching my friend's lifeless body, I wanted to deny it all. I told myself it was trauma, hallucination, the brain's cruel trick to make sense of grief. But the visions didn't stop. They came in dreams, in quiet moments, even in broad daylight, and each one pressed the same truth into me. Ideology untethered from love will always end in violence. In another vision, I saw classrooms. Professors lectured, students took notes, but underneath it I saw invisible currents, streams of ideology flowing unchecked. Some were subtle, dressed up as justice, fairness, progress. Others were blatant, dripping with venom, teaching young minds that anyone who disagrees is the enemy. And I saw those seeds sprouting. Students who entered as learners, leaving as warriors, for causes they barely understood, ready to fight not with reason, but with rage. Jesus whispered, "This is how nations fall, not with armies at the gate, but with hatred in the heart." I wanted to bury it, to lock it away, but everywhere I turned, I saw it. News headlines dripping with outrage, talk shows feeding division like candy, churches splitting over politics, families divided. And in all of it, I heard his words echo. "Do you see now? This is the soil in which Kirk's death grows." And I realized something that chilled me. His murder, as horrific as it would be, wasn't the climax. It was the warning, a signpost showing us how far we've already slid. A trumpet blast saying, "Wake up before more blood is spilled." But he didn't just show me despair. He showed me hope too. I saw small circles of people gathering, not to argue, but to listen. I saw families reclaiming dinner tables, conversations filled with patience instead of rage. I saw communities refusing to let ideology divide them, choosing to see the humanity in one another before the label. And Jesus whispered, "This is the antidote. Where ideology divides, love unites. Where lies radicalize, truth heals. But only if my people choose it." That gave me something to hold on to. Because I realized then that testimony isn't just about pointing to the darkness. It's about holding out a flicker of light. It's about saying, "Here is what he showed me. Here is what's coming if we stay asleep. And here is what could happen if we wake up." So here I am, testifying. He died, and in his death, I was cracked open. Jesus showed me violent ideology for what it really is. Not just politics, not just opinions, but a slow march toward blood. He showed me America, bleeding from words, long before the bullets fly. And he showed me that Kirk's death, as devastating as it would be, is a mirror, a warning, a chance to repent, to wake up, to choose love over ideology before it consumes us whole. I know this is heavy. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't not tell you. Because if I stay silent, I'm part of the negligence. And Jesus made it clear, silence is how hatred wins. That's my testimony so far. That's part one, painful, raw, heavy, but necessary. And I promise you, as heavy as this is, what he showed me next goes even deeper. Because the roots of violent ideology aren't just cultural or political, they're spiritual. And that's where the real war is being fought. When I ended part one, I told you about the night he died, about how Jesus stepped into that unbearable silence and pulled back the veil on violent ideology, how it seeps into hearts, how it twists words into weapons, how it bleeds into bullets. I told you how I saw Charlie Kirk fall, not just as a man silenced, but as a signpost for what happens when ideology replaces love. But what I haven't told you yet is what came after, what Jesus showed me beyond that first shock. Because the truth is, he didn't stop at the vision of one death. He took me deeper into the roots of ideology itself, and into the spiritual war raging behind what looks like politics on the surface. And if the first part broke me, the second part remade me into a man who cannot keep silent anymore. The days after that revelation were unbearable. I couldn't sit still. I'd walk through the city and feel like I was seeing with new eyes. Billboards weren't just advertisements, they were seeds. News headlines weren't just stories, they were weapons. Conversations weren't just chatter, they were battles for the soul. And everywhere I went, I could almost feel the currents underneath. The whispers of ideology creeping through people's minds, bending them slowly, imperceptibly toward violence. It terrified me. One night I was driving, trying to escape my own thoughts, when it happened again. My hands on the wheel, the hum of tires beneath me. And then suddenly everything went still. The road disappeared. The car was gone. And I was standing in what looked like a massive coliseum. Thousands of people filled the seats, cheering, shouting, waving signs. At the center, a man spoke. Not Kirk this time, but another leader. Someone charismatic. Someone who knew how to rile a crowd. At first it looked like energy, like passion, but then I felt it. The air was thick with rage, not. The people weren't there to be inspired. They were there to be weaponized. And Jesus' voice broke through the roar. This is ideology when it becomes worship. And worship without truth always ends in violence. I watched as the crowd turned, not toward him, but toward each other. Fists flew, objects were thrown. And in the middle of it, someone pulled a weapon. The Colosseum erupted into chaos. The same people who had come for words now bled for them. And Jesus whispered, with grief in his tone, "This is what happens when people love their cause more than their neighbor." I woke gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding, headlights of cars honking behind me. But the vision burned in me, and I knew this wasn't about one event. It was about America itself. We've built colosseums of ideology, stadiums, platforms, screens, where voices are raised higher than truth, where we chant louder than we listen, where we worship our side instead of God. And that worship, he showed me, will always demand blood. Then came the vision that cut me the deepest. I saw families, living rooms split down the middle. One side watching one news channel, the other side another, parents glaring at children, siblings refusing to speak, marriages unraveling. And over every one of those living rooms, I saw a shadow, whispering into their ears, "They are your enemy. They don't understand you. They must be defeated." And I realized then that violent ideology doesn't start in rallies. It starts in home. It starts with words we allow to fester, with division we refuse to heal. Jesus spoke again, "A divided home cannot stand, and a divided nation will fall the same way." That broke me, because I saw myself in it. Times when I'd let bitterness creep in, when I'd chosen to win an argument instead of win a heart, when I'd seen someone as a label instead of a soul. I wanted to collapse under the shame, but then he lifted me, his presence both heavy and tender, and said, "This is why I show you, not to crush you, but to wake you, because testimony born in brokenness carries power." The visions didn't stop there. I saw young people in classrooms, their eyes wide, absorbing whatever was poured into them. Some teachers filled them with hope, with truth, with the courage to think for themselves. Others filled them with ideology, with subtle venom disguised as justice. And I watched as those seeds grew, some into compassion, others into violence. And Jesus whispered, "The future of nations is decided not by elections, but by what is planted in classrooms." I saw social media feeds, endless scrolls of anger and fear, young men alone in their rooms, their only company, the voices on screens telling them they were powerless, that the world was against them, that violence would give them back control. And then I saw the headlines, their names written not as students or sons, but as shooters, attackers, assassins. And Jesus said, "These are not monsters. These are sons who were discipled by lies while the church slept." That pierced me to the core, because it meant the blame wasn't just on them, it was on us too. On families, on churches, on communities that left doors open, that chose comfort over vigilance, silence over truth. But in the middle of all that darkness, he showed me hope again. I saw small groups, friends sitting in a circle, phones put away, talking honestly. I saw families praying together, even when awkward, even when messy. I saw communities choosing to love their neighbor, even when they disagreed. And Jesus whispered, "This is resistance, not louder shouts, not stronger fists, but hearts refusing to be radicalized by hate." I asked him then, through tears, "But how? How do we turn this tide? It feels too big, too strong, too far gone." And his answer came like a flood. "You resist violent ideology with my ideology. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who persecute you. Truth is not fragile. Love is not weakness. My cross looked like defeat, but it broke the power of death. And so will my way break the power of hate." That undid me, because I realized then that I wasn't being asked to predict the future or stop the blood with my bare hands. I was being asked to testify, to tell the truth as he gave it to me, to point out the poison and the antidote, to refuse silence. So here I am, broken but speaking. He died. And in his death, Jesus showed me the sickness eating at America, the sickness of violent ideology. He showed me that Charlie Kirk's death wasn't just about silencing a voice, but exposing a disease that has already infected millions of hearts. And he showed me that the cure isn't more ideology, but love, real, raw, sacrificial love, the kind that listens, that forgives, that refuses to let hate have the last word. This is my testimony. Heavy, terrifying, but also somehow filled with hope. Because even in the visions of chaos, even in the blood and division, he never left. His voice was steady, his truth was unshaken, and his call was clear. Testify. So that's what I've done. That's what I'll keep doing. Because silence is surrender. And I refuse to surrender when he's given me this burden to carry. He died. And in that death, I saw not just loss, but revelation. And now I give it to you. What you do with it, that's between you and him.